This is not a biopic of any rowdy called Balarama. There was a rowdy called Balarama, but this film is not a biopic one. So I am not a go-getter, I feel. I think I should have put myself out there. I should have written more. I should have gone. I should have pitched my projects to actors. I should have pitched it to producers instead of sitting and waiting. Shreyas had already decided that he wants to make a film with Vinod Prabhakar, and he wanted it to make it on the subject of Balarama, and he wanted it to be in the style of Aa Dinagalu.
The script, whatever the director or the script writer, who's penning down from years together, it takes so much of time, and me trying to change the whole thing just for my image is a very wrong thing.
Realistic is a style of how you treat the film. So if you show things as they happen, when the audience watches the film and feels, oh, this is happening in front of me, that is realistic treatment. If it seems like a Bahubali, for example, or an RRR, then it is fantasy, or it is.
Welcome to Cinema Express. Nanu Ishanta.
For many Kannada cinema lovers, Aa Dinagalu wasn't just a gangster film. It changed the conversation around Bengaluru's underworld and the people who inhabited that world. Now, director K.M. Chaitanya returns to a similar landscape but through a new story, a new protagonist, and perhaps a new perspective. Joining me today are K.M. Chaitanya and actor Vinod Prabhakar, who takes on the role of Balarama.
Let's find out about the film. Why is it deserved to be told to the audience? Namaskar.
Namaskara.
ಹೇಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
ನಮಸ್ತೆ ಅಮ್ಮ, ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್. ಗುಡ್.
Balaramana Dinagalu. But before getting to Balaramana Dinagalu, Chaitanya, I want you to get back to the heydays of Aa Dinagalu. How did you capitalize the aura of that movie and the success at that time, during that time?
So Aa Dinagalu was serendipity for me because it was not a subject that I chose. It was a subject that chose me.
Okay.
So I was not initially the director of Aa Dinagalu. Mr. Agni Sridhar had written the story and screenplay. He had a director already, and he had started casting for it. So even before I got into the film, Sharath had been cast in the role of Kotwal because he looked so much like Kotwal. Chetan had already been cast. He was Agni Sridhar's sir's choice. And I was called actually, in fact, to act in a role. So I didn't go there as a director. I went there as an actor, and he narrated the story to me, and I was fascinated because I had always heard of Agni Sridhar sir. Never had the opportunity to meet him. I had met him a couple of days back at a party, and he had shook my hand and held my hand a little while longer than necessary, and I was a little scared. And he called me to his office. I met him. He told me the story, and I loved the story. And after I heard the story, I told a few of my viewpoints on the story. I gave references to a few films that I had seen, and he had seen all those films. Mr. Agni Sridhar is a very well-read person. He has seen world cinema, so he could get all the references that I told him. A couple of days later, he called me back, and he said he has made some changes, and I heard that story. Again, I told him what I thought of it. A few days later, he told me that he is looking for a new director for the movie. And he started meeting various directors in Kannada cinema, established directors. I think he also spoke to Mr. Girish Kasarwalli to direct the film. And it so happened that the directors were not available at that point. And then he called me one day and said, "Can I narrate the story to Girish Karnad?" So I took him to meet Girish Karnad, and he narrated the story to Mr. Karnad. Karnad sir heard the story, and he said, "It's a great story. It is very powerful." But at that point, Girish Karnad sir was 72 years old. So he said, "I'm too old for this. It needs fresh energy." 2 days later, Sridhar sir called me, and he said, "Why should I go looking all around the city for a director? Why don't you direct this?" And that is how I became the director of the film. So it was like I said, an accident. I was not supposed to be the director of that film, but I happened to become the director of Aa Dinagalu. So that is where the journey started. But for me, Aa Dinagalu was very close to my heart because I keep saying that though I live in the 2000s. My the most beautiful times that I remember are the 80s and 90s. Those are my formative years. And for everyone, their formative years are the most wonderful years. When I was in college, when I was in school, and that is the time that's the Bangalore that I know. That is the Bangalore that I miss. And because I miss that Bangalore so much, every time I get an opportunity to recreate that Bangalore, I jump at it.
My question about this Aa Dinagalu specifically was like, for a director of your caliber, you should have done many movies. I think Vinod should agree with this. Should have done, very few directors are called cult. You bring that cult tag. When you listen to it only in Kannada cinema, it's something, there's a vibe, cult director anta ಕೇಳಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ. But we didn't get that from you often. What was the reason? What held you back?
Laziness, because I take 3
Please
years
don't
to
say
write.
this, yeah. I feel very bad, especially in today's scenario.
Yeah.
You have an actor who's striving to do really better with every film, and you say lazy. No.
Well, I mean,
Cut off this word.
I've tried my best, in the sense that after Aa Dinagalu, I made Suryakanti, we didn't do very well, and I took time to introspect because I knew I had done a mistake. And cinema takes a lot of money to make, and it's a big responsibility. It is not just like any other creative venture. It is not like writing a novel or doing a painting. When you write a novel or make a painting, if somebody doesn't like it, only you lose. Here there's an entire production which has put in a lot of money. There's an entire team that has worked with you, actors, technicians who have worked with you. So if you are not responsible enough, you are actually putting all their careers at stake. So making a film is a great responsibility. And so I went back, I started thinking about cinema, and then I made Parari, which did fairly well. People didn't expect me to do a comedy, but I did, and it worked for one sector of the audience. Then I did Atagara, which kind of brought me back into the running. And of course, working with Yogesh Dwarkish and Dwarkish Chitra really trained me. Till then I didn't understand the financial aspect of film. I didn't understand the economics of film. I learned it all with Yogesh. And since then I've done, I think after Atagara I've done films more frequently than I've done before. So it was that period from Aa Dinagalu to Atagara that I lost. But in a way it is good that I lost that period, because it helped me train better and make more practically workable films.
Okay.
And I just wanted to add one more thing, because you said that I have to agree with that. I've told him that you're not just here. I wanted him to, spread his wings all over all the languages, because he's a wonderful movie maker and intelligent director.
Of course. What was, first thing is, what was your reaction that when you heard the story of Balarama Dinagalu, did you even think of, when it came to KM Chaitanya, did you first think of Aa Dinagalu?
Of course, ma'am, I was overwhelmed when I heard he's directing.
Yes.
Because I've been a fan of his movie, and I've been a fan of him as well. So there, when I get Mr. Shreyas, the producer, who's like informed me that he's going to direct this movie, I was like, wow, and I was overwhelmed, and I just wanted to. I was eagerly waiting to meet him. So finally, when we met, and I was like, I put out all my, that was anxiety or whatever is there. I was just, I spoke to him, and right on stage, I told that it is not just going to be my sweat. It's going to be my blood also. I'm going to shed, and I wanted to work with him and want this movie to be a very big hit, and it has to do well, because working with such an intelligent person who knows everything. You ask from pin to plane, he knows everything. He's like an encyclopedia. Yes. You ask him, he knows politics, and he knows cinema, he knows. And the way when I started knowing him, it was like bits and pieces. He used to tell few things about his previous the places where he worked, his company, and other things. Then when I came to know about his father, he's a legend. His grandfather, he's a bigger legend. And today, in an interview, when he sat down, and when I saw it in a
Frame.
one stretch cinema, like 2 hours, one stretch cinema, when you see, and he was narrating his whole thing, right from where he started and now where he is, I was like, he's a great man. I'm sitting next to him, and I'm like, any person, any person will love to work with him. Not just me.
Thank you. Thank you.
You
Vinod.
only, and have to know his caliber before, prior to, when you want to work with him, or when you decide, prior to that, you have to know his caliber first. You just can't put questions or fire questions like one yara eno gotilde, you can't ask him.
That is why I asked him. My first question was, a director of such caliber, we couldn't get many films from him. Where did we go wrong? Kannada industry didn't find him. He was always approachable.
Well, I guess also there are go-getters, and there are those who are waiting for opportunities to come to them. So I am not a go-getter, I feel. I think I should have put myself out there. I should have written more. I should have gone. I should have pitched my projects to actors. I should have pitched it to producers instead of sitting and waiting. Probably I was spoiled by the fact that Aa Dinagalu came to me and I didn't go to it. And subsequently, most of my films happened that way. Even Parari, in fact, I didn't approach the producer. I happened to be doing a corporate film for that person, and that person said, "What new movie are you working on?" And I said, "I had written this comedy film." And he asked me, "Who's the producer?" And I said, I don't have a producer." He said, "I'll produce it." And that's how it happened. So even with Atagara, Atagara, in fact, we wrote it, me and Kannan Parmeshwaran, but we didn't know who to go to. And Kannan went and said, "Let us give it to Yogesh." And I never believed that Yogesh will agree to an experimental film like this. But Yogesh loved it, and I wanted to make a 1 crore 25 lakh film. Yogesh made it a 4.5 crore film. And then, Chiru came on board, and then Chiru got attached to me, and Chiru traveled with me for the next 4 films. So I think the thing is that even with Balaramana Dinagalu, I didn't go to the producer. It was Shreyas who came to me and said, we have this person that we want to make a film. We want to make it with Vinod Prabhakar, and we want to make it like Aa Dinagalu.
It was the producer's choice of Vinod Prabhakar.
Yes,
to do
Shreyas had already decided that he wants to make a film with Vinod Prabhakar, and he wanted it to make it on the subject of Balarama, and he wanted it to be in the style of Aa Dinagalu, and so he came to me.
Okay, so he gave you the title, and he said he wanted a story of Balarama.
That's
So
right.
you worked on the story.
So what happened was that during the pandemic, because I had nothing to do, and it was almost 15 years since I had done Aa Dinagalu by the time the pandemic happened, and I had consciously stayed away from making another underworld film because Aa Dinagalu had become such a big hit, and everyone were asking me when I would make my next gangster film. So I didn't want to be known as an underworld director. I wanted to do many kinds of films. So I did comedy, I did thriller, I did a family subject, and then during the pandemic, I said, why don't I try and make another underworld film? So I started reading books on the underworld written by Agnish Sridhar sir, Ravi Beligare, or B.K. Shivaram has written Police Kanda Kathegalu. Read that, and I read Dongri to Dubai by Hussein Zaidi, Mafia Queens of Mumbai. As I read all of that, a kind of story started taking shape in my head, but I didn't know what I will do out of it. I didn't know whether I'll make it into a movie or whether I'll make it into a web series. But something had started forming, and manifestation. Shreyas came to me in 23 and he said, "We want to make this film with Vinod Prabhakar and we want to make it on Balarama." So, which is when I said, "Okay, excellent. Now I have found the platform to make it." So, all that research converged and it became the script, which is finally coming on screen on the 26th of June.
When we think of Game Chaitanya, he's the grandson of Shivarudrapa, and the author, the poet he is. He can always do films author based. Yes, there were at one point of time, there were some producers who really looked for novel based subjects. Why Chaitanya is getting back to underworld?
So actually, during the pandemic, Appu sir called me once, and ever since I did Aa Dinagalu, he's been asking me to make a. He had been asking me to make a film for him. I made a couple of subjects. I narrated it to him. He didn't like it, and so I kept working. And every time I met, he said, "Okay, have you made a script?" And then I would say, "I'm still working on it, sir." And during the pandemic, finally he called me and said, "Look, I don't think you want to make a film for this phase. Okay, but why don't, if you have a script that you already want to make, I'm now producing films, make it for me, because I have a tie-up with Amazon and I'll produce it." So I said, "There's this novel by Purna Chandra Tejasvi called Jugari Cross. I've been dying to make it. Will you produce it?" He said, "Okay, write the script and come to me, let me read it, and if I like it, I'll surely produce it." So I had actually started working on that, because that is one of the novels that I really wanted to make. But unfortunately, whatever happened, it happened. Now Jugari Cross is finally being made by another director. I wish them all the best. It is true that there are many novels that I want to turn into movies. I will. I'm from A. I have moved to B. I still have.
Working with Chaitanya, you know, you have a mass hero image, but he wants to see you in a character driven role. So, just to understand, is this based on realistic incident, or is it a biopic? There is a thin line in whatever you make on underworld stories. You can't say it is a realistic subject, a biopic, and still fictional. How can that be?
So this is not a biopic of any rowdy called Balarama. There was a rowdy called Balarama, but this film is not a biopic on him. But a film can be realistic without it being a biopic. Realism is a treatment. Realistic is a style of how you treat the film. So if you show things as they happen, when an audience watches the film and feels, "Oh, this is happening in front of me," that is realistic treatment. If it seems like a Bahubali, for example, or an RRR, then it is fantasy, or it is a superhero kind of a film. As far as him being a mass hero is concerned, if you have seen his recent journey, here is an actor who is dying to do different kinds of roles. He wants to experiment. Look at the kind of films he has right now. He has just done Madeva, where his performance was so awe-inspiring, stunning. Then he is doing Nelson, where he plays two different age roles, and Balarama, where it's an extremely restrained, brooding kind of a performance. So he is a versatile person. His range is extraordinary. And for him, I think he can take any subject and make it into mass. That's the kind of hero that he is.
It makes a lot of difference to work with Chaitanya and then to work with other directors.
Me being a director's actor,
Okay.
I always understood what he's looking out, and what he's like visualizing. What does he want actually? Because me being an actor, I literally should understand why is he insisting me on sticking on to few points and few things, and I should never change all those things, because we worked together, we sat with the script, we discussed so much. I literally understood him, what he literally wants. Then it was very easy for me, and he literally wanted me to just there were times where I never used to go see the monitor, look at my performance, and ask him for a change. I always used to stand in the position and with the other actors, I used to just peep and ask him, where he used to sit behind the monitor and ask him, "Sir, okay now?" He used to say, "This is a perfect thing." Then I used to stop it, because I never used to change things. That's the main thing is, like, for the whole script, he's the one who understands. Who's already seen the movie.
It's also there, like, as a cult director, KM Chaitanya, I always reiterate. I want to say this. He brings in authenticity, even though he says fictional, but he would have done some research around Balarama. So, for you, was it important to just go by the script, or did you also do some research on your own about this particular character?
Yeah, of course.
You did?
Yeah, of course I did.
Okay.
I watched a few of the interviews and I went through many links which were forwarded by him
Okay.
to me. And the other assistant director was like Kiran Shiv. And
Okay.
even I had previously watched, because I was born and brought up in the same period where, I heard about all these stories where Jairaj and Kotwal and Balrama and qualifiers, and they all were ruling Bengaluru.
Okay.
So those were the times where I was in school and I used to study when qualifier was murdered in Shivaji Nagar, because I was born and brought up in Frasertown. So we used to be fascinated with all these kinds of stories, and I literally have seen people fighting and seen these people right in front of me. So even I had many stories to be narrated to him during this script writing, and of course those can't be brought down in the cinema. But still, how this underworld and this
It gives you a
field
flavor
works.
of that world.
Discovering beyond public stories is interesting. The eyewitness, something. But what is this fascination for underworld, not only as a filmmaker, even with the audience today?
As a disclaimer, firstly, I've told you that I didn't choose Aa Dinagalu. Aa Dinagalu
Yes.
chose me. So it was not my choice to make an underworld film. It succeeded, and of course, then the rest is history. But I can understand why people are fascinated by the underworld. See, we grew up with stories, listening to stories of kings and how kings wage wars against each other and everything else. And then we became an independent country and we became a democracy. So the world, the age of kings and queens has ended. But we are still looking for stories of this king from this place invading another territory, that person defending himself, intrigues, palace intrigues, everything. We don't find that. We find it in politics, but politicians don't kill each other. They fight elections. Where do you find it? You find it when a Jairaj fights a Kotwal, or when there is a
Exactly.
person ruling. So for example, somebody is ruling Shivaji Nagar, somebody is ruling Hanumant Nagar, and there are gangs fighting each other. It is very similar to the stories that we grew up with. It is like wars between two different cities.
Exactly,
happen.
yeah, right.
So somehow it is very fascinating that even in this modern city, those kind of wars are happening. Those kind of kings exist, and each king has his own quirk. So that is what I think
Fighting for the territory
makes us,
is like, yeah,
fighting
it's
for
nice.
territory, and that is why we are attracted to underworld stories.
Okay.
A wonderful thing.
I know it's just one film, but a lot to be said from that one film only. You empathize the dons. You show them, you bring a soft corner of their side. Is it
So
important?
one of the principles of writing, whenever you write any story, you have to write it with empathy. That is the principle of good writing. And so if you're writing about, say, even if you're writing about somebody like Hitler, if you try to see his human side and write it, there's nothing human about what he did. He killed 6 million Jews, which is unforgivable. But still, if you look at Hitler closely, and then you will find a story. There's this story where Hitler, a few days before his death, was playing with children.
Okay.
He knew that he's losing the war and everything else. But in that film, you see him, he's playing with children and he's saying, "No, you're cheating. I'm going to fight." So, if you look at any character with empathy, if you look at, see, for example, in Aa Dinagalu, there's this scene before Kotwal's death. We had a lot of argument, me and Sridhar sir, where I said, Sridhar sir felt that Kotwal is a very bad person and that, there was no human side to him. And then I said, "Sir, on the night of his death, is it possible that he would have had one moment where he would have thought about the people who are with him?" And he said, "You're right. Actually, I will rewrite that." And he wrote that, where Kotwal is saying, "We are underworld people, but those Chetan and Sridhar are nice people. Why should they get caught along with us? Let us leave tomorrow." And by then he gets killed. And then you just started feeling sorry for Kotwal and he gets killed. And I think these are the moments that make stories beautiful. Yeah, there is nothing called as a villain or a hero. A hero has flaws. A villain also has human elements. And when you bring that, the story becomes more complex and it becomes more human. And that is what I look for.
Okay. But also, the authenticity you bring in to the backdrop of Bengaluru of that time, even the violence you bring in, there is bloodshed. There are, you can hear to the gunshots, but it is not as gory as one expects. How do you think about it?
See, the way I look at it is if somebody watches a movie and goes back and wants to hit somebody, then that's a dangerous thing. You know, when you show violence on screen or when you tell a violent story, it is to tell people that violence is wrong, not to glorify violence. When we read the Mahabharata is not a story of that glorifies war. It is a story that says why war is bad, because brothers killing brothers, cousins killing cousins, revenge. At the end of it, what happened? Thousands of people died. So when you show violence on screen or when you show the life of an underworld don, you're not telling the viewers, oh, see what a wonderful don, you also go become an underworld don. No, you're telling them how horrible that life is and how sad it is. Look at it, correct yourself before you get sucked into that life.
So you actually said telling a message. Okay, for Vinod, anything about Balarama that while going through the script or the references you have taken, did it surprise you or shock you?
Because I think previously I had known about Balarama,
Okay.
so nothing like that happened. Like I wasn't shocked with anything or nothing. I had heard similar stories in a different way, in a different point of view, from a different angle. So even he would have heard the same story in a different angle. So when he used to tell, even I used to tell the same thing. End of the day, we would end up, in between somewhere, and uh, I wasn't taken back or I wasn't shocked with any instance because I already knew those. But the only thing is, like, I was very fascinated by the way how we put that, in writing, and like that was a wonderful because we already know that he's the master of class and cult cinemas.
Okay.
I was taken back how he pinned the lines
But Chaitanya's
and not
filmmaking,
offending anybody.
but
Right?
Yeah.
Chaitanya's filmmaking is different from the regular commercial drama. So you had to adjust something. You had to unlearn to be working with a director like Chaitanya.
I didn't have to unlearn, but I had to learn many things. Like I was.
Actually, I think the unlearning had started from Madeva.
Yeah.
He had already started unlearning. I think he is also tired of doing the kind of films that he had done. Even I was tired of doing the kind of films I had done. So he was looking to make new films, and this collaboration happened.
I had already taken a new turn.
Okay.
So I literally waiting for, I always scratch. I start from scratch. I just erase all my previous cinemas and just start as a fresher again.
But you always love to live the character
Yes.
you are in.
Yeah.
So the experience of living the life of Balarama from the day he said action cut to you till it got over the rap. How was it? Or still, are you in a hangover of Balarama?
Yeah, of course. Even after shoot, it takes a lot for me to come out of the character.
Yes.
It literally takes a lot. I have to prepare myself. Even, see, I just can't switch in and switch out. I just can't do this instantly. So I had to get into the character, live as Balarama, see everything as Balarama, see the new world as Balarama.
Okay.
And it doesn't, it doesn't take much out of me, but literally all the suffering is suffered by Nisha, my wife. She takes a lot.
So you had to go back to 80s. You literally took him back to 80s. But Chaitanya, this was the first time you're writing independently. You always had writers, and this is your first time you're writing for your own.
Yeah, I've adapted earlier. I've adapted like Ake I adapted the script. But before this, I wrote, Adarinda, which never got made, which is still waiting for release. This is the first time where I've completely written story, screenplay, and directed it.
Direct.
How was this? How was this writing side of yours like?
I love writing. I always wanted to write. There are other scripts that I've written which have not got made.
Okay.
There are about 4 or 5 scripts which I've written, which I've been pitching, which haven't got made. But this finally got made, and writing always fascinates me because I come from a legacy of writers. I was trained. My mentor was a writer, Girish Karnad. My as you know, my family is a family of writers. And the most beautiful thing about writing is that you write and then you finish writing and then you start rewriting and then you start sculpting, because writing is where the film actually is made. Everything else adds to it, but the soul of the film happens in the writing. And it's a very painful process, it's a very excruciating process, but it's also a very beautiful process, and I
How
love
many
it.
pages you tore and what did you feel each time you?
I don't know. I think my first draft had some 500 scenes, and it's come down to about 120 scenes. So I used to keep telling all these stories that I've been researching. And I used to write scenes, and I would discuss it with Haridas KGF, my editor, and he would say, "Oh, so wonderful." And then I would say, "That scene is gone. This scene is gone." He said, "What? Why are you removing it? It's so beautiful." And then at one point, he said, "Stop! Don't make it into a movie. It's so beautiful. Let us make it into a web series. You're wasting so much of material." But then a film is like that. We don't want the audience to sit there and then start looking at their phones. It has to be tight. It has to be taut. So finally we edited the script and we have what we finally have.
Which is the final version like?
The final version was about 120 pages long.
That was your 15th or
That
16th
must have
version.
that must have been my 22nd or 25th draft, maybe.
The production value, what you did during the time of Aa Dinagalu is completely different today.
Say, I'm very grateful to my producers, Padmavati and Shreyas, because it's an expensive film. If they had chosen a story of today, it's easier to make because clothes, cars, everything is always there, houses, everything. But if you have to make a film in the 80s and 90s, everything has to be created from the scratch, and which means a lot of expense. First of all, getting those cars, getting those bikes, everything come for a price, and the sets have to be put, properties have to be created. So firstly, I'm very thankful to my producers, grateful to them that they made this possible, that made it possible for this to happen. But equally importantly, once the producers foot that money, it is also important to find people who can help you recreate that world. And for that, I had an excellent art director like Vishwas Kashyap, one of the best in India right now. And I had Venu, sir, and we had Haridas KGF, and Nisha ma'am worked on the costumes. So for Aa Dinagalu, Sumana Kittur oversaw the entire costumes and how the styling has to be. For this film, Nisha madam did that. She went through pictures from the 80s and 90s, and she said, "This is the kind of costumes that we should have. This is the kind of cut. This is the kind of collar. This is the kind of stitch." And with that, my team of my direction team, I had an excellent associate director named Kiran Shiv, and under him there were Akshay, Mandasmita, Girish, Manoj, Raghu Smith, and all of them. And none of them are from the 90s. They're all 2000s kids. And because they are 2000s kids, they went through it in detail. They made photographs, they made sketches, and they made sure that I get the authenticity right. So this entire team is responsible for ensuring that I could recreate it.
But for Vinod to have the producer, it's very difficult to get a producer today. Especially actors go around like, have something, can you, produce for me? But you already had a producer. The producer choosing you and then taking you to Chaitanya and say, "No, I want Vinod to." What did you feel like?
See,
It's not about the market. It's like, okay, at least for whatever the experience you bring in as an actor.
yeah, basically because Shreyas was my fan, like right from childhood. He's a very young guy. He's like somewhere around 25. I think I met him when he was 16, 17 years.
Oh,
Yeah, he had come to me and he traveled with me a lot. So throughout, he was traveling with me. And one fine day he comes out with an idea producing a cinema with me. I said, shut up, that's none of, it's not your cup of tea. You're just going to, erase all these thoughts. And uh, again, out of the blue, he comes with his mom to my place and he says, no. And she like, no, my son is like very interested in producing a cinema. And the condition was, first and foremost condition was, you're going to make a movie in below or not above 7 crores. That is your budget. That's it. Because my market days before Madeva. This happened before Madeva. So that was my condition. He was like, okay, boss. He used to call me boss. And he's like, okay, boss, let me just see. Then he comes and tells me that I've got the script and Chaitanya sir is going to direct. And I was, again, as I said, I was overwhelmed and I said, okay, then we all sat together. And Nisha also was part of the team those days, and we all sat together. And Shreyas' idea was to do this movie in a larger scale. It was like, I said, no, see, this is my market value. And anything above 7 crores is going to be a very difficult thing, especially you're going to be at risk. And I'm not going to let you do all those things. And I just, I said, no, you're not going to do it. And we all sat together and there were lots of discussion. It took so much of time. And he was, again, a bigger fan of Aa Dinagalu. He approached Chaitanya sir because he was a fan of Aa Dinagalu and he was a fan of Chaitanya sir and he wanted to do a movie with him. And moreover, topping up all these things, he wanted all the stars in Aa Dinagalu to come back and recreate the same history. And we were like shell-shocked, and I told him, do you ever think, how much they are going to cost? It's not possible. And he wanted to bring in again Ilayaraja sir.
That was my next question.
Yeah, and I think that he'll answer, but the budget wise and other things, then the budget rised, and I was the person who was literally at risk, and I told him, no, we're not going to do this. But he and Padmavati ma'am, who's like his mom, they were very confident about producing a bigger cinema.
It's good, you were thoughtful about, about the production and everything. But they knew what to bring in. I think probably Chaitanya would have given that vision.
No. I wouldn't do.
He's out of
I
this.
wouldn't do such things. I also told them that we have to do whatever is within their budget. They were very ambitious. In fact, he wanted to bring Santhosh Narayanan. I said, we can approach Santhosh Narayanan, but do you know how much he charges? Because he's one of India's biggest music directors. He said, it doesn't matter. I want to bring him. So I approached Santhosh Narayanan through my friend Karthik Subraj, and Santhosh agreed. And the producers brought such a big music director on board.
But when you had a legend like Ilayaraja for Aa Dinagalu, why did you think of Santhosh Narayan? Or was again a producer's choice that you had to?
No, in fact, Shreyas actually initially suggested that we should consider Ilayaraja sir, and even Vinod also thought of Ilayaraja sir. At that point, we kept discussing about what will happen with audio rights, and there were certain other things that had happened in Ilayaraja sir's personal life, and I think Bhavatarani had passed away, and we thought, might not be the right time to approach him. He might be taking time to grieve and so on. And we said, okay, but we need somebody of that caliber.
I also thought like you were influenced by his music composition for Vada Chennai.
Yes. No, that's the next part. So the thing is that once we said, okay, maybe not Ilayaraja sir, then who else? When we're thinking who else, it was Shreyas and Vinod who came up with the name of Santhosh Narayan. Santhosh Narayan is somebody whose music I've been following from Jigar Tanda time, and I've seen Vada Chennai, I loved his music. but I couldn't even think in those terms because I know how expensive he is. So when they suggested Santhosh Narayan, I said, wow, of course I would love to work with him, but where can we afford him? But then Shreyas, once he put his mind to it, he wanted him. So
I
then
want
he
to put
came.
this across, like, okay, bringing uh, Santosh Narayan is fine, but did he, like, it is important for them to understand something about the story, the Bengaluru underworld or the Balarama.
One is, of course, he saw Aa Dinagalu. He hadn't
Okay.
seen it till I approached him. He saw it and he said, "Wow, this is a completely different kind of a Kannada movie. I hadn't seen this movie." And he had worked with Vetrimaran in Vada Chennai, and he had seen that Vetrimaran also has that very realistic treatment, and the fact that Karthik had told him about me, all that helped. And yeah, he see 80s and 90s has a kind of musical flavor that needs to be brought,
Yes.
and Santhosh had never got so far an opportunity to explore that genre of music. This film gave him that opportunity, and he had a ball of a time because of that. He, using the kind of instruments, that retro style of music, everything is there. I was telling that there are 7 songs in this film. There's one is a rap, one is a rock anthem,
Oh, great.
and one is Shuru Shuru, which is a typical melody, and then there is Tata Tata, which is a Tamil Tapangkooth
Tappakuchi.
kind of a story, the song, and then there's an item song. Then there's this indie classical,
Oh,
in those days Indus Creed and all those, that kind of an indie classical song which is sung by Vijay Prakash. And there's another very very classical kind of a song sung by this young kid called Zohan, who's just 5 years old. So we have an entire range of songs in this album.
of course, you have collaborated with H.C. Venu, cinematographer, and you know his work. So again, to be working with him.
For Aa Dinagalu, another big strength was Venu. And while I was a student in 80s and 90s, Venu was a proper practicing journalist and a what do you call that, photojournalist at that time. So he had, in fact, one of the photo sessions of Jairaj was done by Venu sir, the actual Jairaj. So he had seen Kotwal, he had interacted many times with Muttaparai. So all these characters I have not seen, he has seen. All that Bangalore, he has seen better than I have seen.
Okay.
So it is a great help because he is my eyes at the end of it. The director's eyes is the cinematographer, and he is the one who is visualizing it for me.
You also have brought in very interesting characters here. Like sometimes such movies bring in the old actors, but you have tried to find new faces. I think Vinay.
Vinay Gowda is an excellent find. I mean, people already know him through Big Boss and the other films that he has done. But this film, he himself has said in many interviews that it's a path-changing film for him, and he has really acted excellently. He has performed very well. The interesting thing is that Vinay plays one of these Tamil speaking dons from one of those areas in Bangalore, and I have not seen that world. Neither has Vinay seen that world. That's the world that he has grown up in.
Okay.
So he was the one who trained Vinay in that role. He said, "This is the mannerism that you'll do. This is the kind of speech pattern that you'll do. This is how you will speak." He not only worked with him during shoot, then he sat with him during the dubbing also and made sure he gets his accent and everything, the dialect right.
He believed in teamwork
He
because
believed.
only then.
Yeah, I mean, he's been so important for this in training Vinay. Even when I'm looking at the script or doing other things, he would be sitting with other actors trying to work with them. We had this excellent actor Aditya Ashtrey, who was
Aditya
in
Ashtrey.
Daredevil Mustafa. He has performed very well in this film. We have the producer's brother Tejas Jairam. He has done a very good role. There's a new actor called Srinivas who has played a role called Tommy. Excellent performer.
Okay. You
So
also have Priya Anand.
of course,
Of course.
Priya
Was
Anand
was
is. I mean, it was great working with her. She's a wonderful person, wonderful human being, very similar to Nisha Madam in her obsession with dogs. She used to bring her dog to the set every day, and then first the dog would come, and then you would know, okay, Priya is ready. She's going to come next, and then the dog would loiter around, and she would when she's a action to cut actress. So you say action, she will act, and then she'll go and she'll be monkeying around with assistant directors.
Yeah.
She will go speak to
set.
the light boy, ask him if he has eaten. She is very caring, and she'll be talking to the producer, joking with them. And then when you call her back, she'll come and she's completely professional. When she's shooting, she's completely professional. The minute you say cut, she's a little girl,
Okay.
and it was great working with her.
But also for Vinod, why was it important to bring in your experience and inputs in definitely looking whether other actors are also doing well and also sitting at the edit table, making sure, whatever the film needs should be there. You didn't think, okay, my work is left to only action and cut. You went beyond that. Was it a reason like you're making sure this should be a winner?
Yeah, of course, ma'am. The main thing is like I'm not an insecure person. I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, and cinema is about teamwork. I definitely believe in teamwork. Only when you trust your team, you definitely tend to win. That's what Madeva also happened like that. We all sat together. We did lots of homework and teamwork. If you're like, if you're not, I'm a very secure person. So it's like me trying to induce or me trying to teach somebody is just because I want the cinema to be perfect. I want the frame to be perfect.
You didn't find any interference kind with his it?
No. Involvement, a lot of involvement, yes. No interference.
Okay.
Every time he came in, he was actually telling me things to make it better for other actors. He would say, that Rai character, you need to build him up a little more. He has to become a little more strong. Katti can actually be a little more diabolic. So he was actually more concerned about making the space more for other actors than for his own character, which is what most heroes would have done. They would try to increase the space of their own character, but he was not doing that. He was doing what was necessary for the film to work.
Okay.
And that is what is wonderful about him. And that is where I see a complete director in him. He doesn't think like a hero. He thinks more like a director. And I keep telling him that it's high time he directs now.
So
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, when we are editing, I don't I ask in previous cinemas. I don't ask the editor to I don't tell him, but nandu nanan madi, and I always call him by his name. I call ಅವನ್ ಮಾದೇವದ್ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಬೇಡ ಅದು ಇದು ತೆಗಿರಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ಬಲರಾಮಂದು ಈ ಕ್ಲೋಸ್ ಅಪ್ ಬೇಡ ತೆಗಿರಿ ಬೇಡ ಸರ್ ಇದು ಬಲರಾಮದು. ಸೊ ಐ ಆಲ್ವೇಸ್ ಸಿ ಇಟ್ as an audience, and I always see this as a it's a script.
You converse between the character and the audience, like how much they want from each other. Like that's important. But so for you today, more than a hero, what has become important? The story and your character. That's what I see when you're
Of course, the story is the hero. The story is the life of the cinema.
Okay.
So I always believe in only the script. Script is the hero.
Okay. But with why should audience watch Balaramana Dinagalu?
Well, it's a trip down memory lane. It's a beautiful nostalgic experience. We've all heard of 80s and 90s. Some of us have been lucky to be growing up in those times, but I think there's a whole generation out there which hasn't seen the 80s and 90s and how beautiful it was, how fascinating it was, and how deadly it was on the streets of Bangalore. The gangsters, we don't see those gangsters anymore. We don't have that kind of rowdyism anymore. To see that world, to see that recreated on screen, and to see, of course, great performers like him and the rest of my cast, to see the technical brilliance of people like Venu, Santhosh, Haridas, and Vishwas, and to experience a story that also tells the history of Bangalore in its most crucial decade.
Also, is there more interesting stories of Bengaluru underworld than what we see in Bombay?
See, the flavor of Bengaluru underworld is wholly different from Bombay. The cities are completely different. Bombay is a coastal city, is a port. So the kind of underworld that exists in Mumbai is driven by the geography of Mumbai. Ours is a landlocked town. Ours is a boom town. Ours is a city of science and engineering and all those things. But still here, we had many. See, Bangalore was a smaller city, right? When it started. And as it began to grow, it started occupying the various palyas, the various sandras, and everything around it. All these sandras and all these palyas had their own people, rulers there. And they became part of Bangalore. So the dons of Bangalore also had to work with those smaller chieftains. It was like the kings getting smaller chieftains and saying, "We will give you this much, and you give us this much, and we'll work together." And so that is how the underworld of Bangalore is. The growth of Bangalore is equivalent to the growth of Bangalore underworld, and how the culture changed.
The way you portray the underworld is different from what we regularly see. But a lot of stories have been told about underworld. Do you think it's done and dusted, but still you want to, relive through those characters?
I was told the same thing when I did Aa Dinagalu. They said there are so many rowdy films, films on rowdyism. What is new about Aa Dinagalu? The film spoke for itself. So I hope the same thing happens with Balarama Dinagalu.
Of course.
It was such a beautiful way he's explaining, how that
Yeah.
that was so beautiful how you explained
The king,
the king, and the comparison.
I know.
What he did was
I never,
wonderful.
like, for us, underworld is something, the bad. But the way he sees underworld is completely different. It's a different world. What people might not be, it's not usual world, but still the way he sees it.
That's how it's going to be in Balarama.
That's why it's cult. We want you to hold that cult for a long time.
Thank you.
And for now, definitely, yeah. Of course, for Vinod, this is a very important film.
Yes.
Because it takes you to another level. Different kind of characters come to you. You're already getting different characters, but this is another film. And definitely, if you want to say to the audience why people should watch Balaramana Dinagalu.
ಯಾ ಇಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಪ್ರತಿ ಸಿನಿಮಾ ನಾನು ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ರೈಟ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ನನ್ನ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಸಿನಿಮಾ, ಮೊದಲನೇ ಸಿನಿಮಾ ಅಂತ ಹಿಡಿದು ಇವತ್ತು ಪ್ರೀವಿಯಸ್ ನನ್ನ ಮಾದೇವವರೆಗೂ ನಾನು ಏನೇ ತಪ್ಪುಗಳು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅದನ್ನು ನೀವು ತೀಡಿ ಇವತ್ತು ನನ್ನ ಬೆನ್ನೆಲುಬಾಗಿ ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಪ್ರತಿ ಸಿನಿಮಾಗೂ ನನ್ನ ಆಶೀರ್ವಾದ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀರಾ. ನಾನು ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಸಲ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ನಾನು ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಆದರೆ ಪ್ರೀವಿಯಸ್ ಸಿನಿಮಾ ನಾನು ಮಾದೇವ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡಾಗ ಭಾಳ ಭರವಸೆಯಿಂದ ನಾನು ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡೆ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಇದೊಂದು ಸಿನಿಮಾ ಮಿಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಡಿ, ತುಂಬ ಒಂದೊಳ್ಳೆ ಪರ್ಫಾರ್ಮೆನ್ಸಿಂದ ಹಿಡಿದು ನಾನೊಬ್ಬ ನಟನಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಗುರುತಿಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೆ. ಸೊ ಅದೇ ಥರ ನೀವು ಆಶೀರ್ವಾದ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ. ಸೊ ಆ ಸಿನಿಮಾನ ನೋಡಿ ಗೆಲ್ಸಿದ್ರಿ, ಹರಿಸಿದ್ರಿ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ದುಪ್ಪಟ್ಟು ಈ ಸಿನಿಮಾ ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಯಾರನ್ನೂ ನಿರಾಶೆ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. ದುಪ್ಪಟ್ಟಷ್ಟು ನಿಮಗೆ ಈ ಸಿನಿಮಾ ನಾನು ಏನು ಇಷ್ಟು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮನೋರಂಜನೆ ನೀಡುತ್ತೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಹೇಳೋಕ್ಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟಪಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಆಲ್ ಚೈತನ್ಯ ಸರ್ ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಏನು ಕಲ್ಟ್ ಫೀಲ್ ಏನಿದೆಯೋ, ಈಗ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಒಂದಿಷ್ಟು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಒಂದು ನೋಟ ಬೇರೆ ಥರ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ನಾವು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡೋದು ಒಬ್ಬರ ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ ಯಾವ ಥರ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಾವು ಬೇರೆ ಥರ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ, ಇವರ ಒಂದು ಪರ್ಸೆಪ್ಷನ್, ಇವರೊಂದು ನೋಟನೇ ಬೇರೆ ಥರ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಸೇರಿ ಬಲರಾಮನ ದಿನಗಳು ಆಗಿರೋದು. ನನ್ನ ಜೊತೆ ಪ್ರಿಯಾನಂದ ಆಗಿರಲಿ, ಆಶೀಶ್ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಯವರಾಗಿರಲಿ, ಅಟುಲ್ ಕುಲಕರ್ಣಿ ಅವರಾಗಿರಲಿ, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಭಾಳಷ್ಟು ಕಲಾವಿದರು, ವಿನಯ್ ಗೌಡ, ರಜತ್ ಅವರು, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅರುಣ್, ಅನಿಲ್ ಸಿದ್ದು, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಪುನೀತ್, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಆದಿತ್ಯ ಶ್ರೀ, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಒಂದು ತಾರಾ ಬಳಗನೇ ಇದೆ. ಇವರು ಯಾರೂ ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನು ನಿರಾಶೆ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಸಿನಿಮಾ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅಫ್ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ವೇಣು ಅವರ ಕ್ಯಾಮ್ರಾ ವರ್ಕ್ ಇದೆ, ಸಂತೋಷ್ ನಾರಾಯಣ್ ಅವರ ಮ್ಯೂಸಿಕ್ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಭಾಳ ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಸಿನಿಮಾ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಖಂಡಿತ ಈ ಸಿನಿಮಾನ ಥಿಯೇಟ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿ. ಇದೇ ತಿಂಗಳು ಜೂನ್ 26ಕ್ಕೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ನಮ್ಮ KVN ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯವರು ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಬ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಆಗ್ತಿರೋದು. ಸೊ ನೋಡಿ ಹರಸಿ ಹಾರೈಸಿ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊತೀನಿ. ಜೈ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ. ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸೋ ಮಚ್ ಫಾರ್ ದಿಸ್ ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂ. ನಾನು
Thank you so much, Sharda.
So we will experience it on the silver screen on June 26th.